Greetings everyone, I hope that you're doing well. I have two main goals in this video. So the first one, obviously, is to help you learn English. And to do that, we're going to be looking at repeated comparatives and double comparatives. The second goal is that we're going to look at some really bad statistical correlations using these grammatical forms. So welcome to Bad Statistics with David. Before we begin looking at these statistics themselves, I would like to just review what repeated and double comparatives are. The first example is the weather in Morocco is getting hotter and hotter. So we see a continual increase in the temperature in Morocco. So we have a repeated comparative, hotter and hotter. The weather in Morocco is getting hotter and hotter. Now we can use repeated comparatives with adjectives that do not have a comparative form by using more. As an example, as the COVID lockdowns continue, people are getting more and more worried about the economy. Or we could say, people are finding that watching TV is less and less enjoyable. When we talk about nouns, we either use more, less, or in the case of countable nouns, fewer. So as an example, we look forward to when there are fewer and fewer COVID-19 cases. We use fewer because cases is a count noun. We can have 1, 2, 3 cases. So we are looking forward to when there are fewer and fewer COVID-19 cases as opposed to the next example. We look forward to when there is less and less sickness due to COVID-19. In this example, sickness is a non-count noun. And last of all, for both count and non-count, we use more and more. As an example, we look forward to getting more and more freedoms back as the lockdown finishes. So the repeated comparative is one grammatical form. The second grammatical form we're going to use is the double comparison. The more you exercise, the stronger you get. The less you exercise, the weaker you get. So we can see that the one causes the other or is correlated to the other. So more exercise, more strength, less exercise, less strength. Here's another example. The harder you try, the more you will succeed. So we have harder in how much you try and the more success. And the less you try, the less you will succeed. Now let's move on to our bad statistics. Our first statistical correlation is a correlation between U.S. crude oil imports from Norway and drivers killed in collisions with railway trains in the U.S. So as you see, as the U.S. imports less and less oil from Norway, there are fewer and fewer drivers killed in collisions with trains in the U.S. So I could say the less oil we import from Norway, the fewer people are killed by trains in the U.S. Good statistical analysis, I would say. Here's another one. As fewer and fewer people drown by falling out of fishing boats, the marriage rate in Kentucky becomes less and less. So a correlation between people drowning because of fishing boats and people getting married in Kentucky. Another one with marriage and the consumption of margarine. We can see in this one that as people consume less and less margarine, that the divorce rate in Maine becomes less and less. So the less people consume margarine in Maine, the fewer people get divorced. This is bad news for the margarine companies. Good news for the cow industry. Speaking of the cow industry, we have the per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese. This is not just any cheese, this is mozzarella cheese. And we can see very clearly that the more people eat mozzarella cheese, the more people are getting civil engineering doctorates in the U.S. Maybe the correlation goes the other way. Maybe the more people get civil engineering doctorates, the more people eat mozzarella cheese. Now this one, I don't know which caused which. But this next one, I think that we can easily see which causes which. We have the per capita cheese consumption in the U.S. versus the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. I don't know if that strikes fear in your heart, but it sure does for me. This last one, there's not a lot of data points, but we can see an inverse relationship between the amount of people using seat belts while they drive their cars and the amount of deaths we have happening by astronauts in outer space. So in the 80s, we only had 10% of people wearing seat belts in the US. In the 90s, it was 80%. But yet you see the decline in the number of deaths by astronauts in space. So we could say here that the more people wear seat belts while driving their cars, the fewer astronauts die in space. So it gives another reason for that phrase, buckle up for safety. It's not just your safety that you're concerned about. Alright, so we have just looked at some spurious statistical correlations, but as any good statistician knows, correlation does not imply causation. In fact, I would say that the more and more people use spurious correlations, the less and less people trust statistical analyses. But I don't have any proof of that. If you would like to see some more spurious correlations, or if you would like to learn about using statistics more properly, follow the links in the description below. And tell me, what was your favorite correlation? Don't forget to leave a comment.